Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. I am your host, Rob, and with me as always, Carter. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Good, man. I'm looking forward to a fun conversation tonight.
Yeah, we're talking about some of our favorite things, whiskey.
Yeah, it's going to be a good topic. I think we're going to learn a lot. We're going to get to explore some new bottles that I haven't had, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, same here.
But before we introduce our guests, let's say thank you to all of our listeners who come join us every week and listen to the episodes we put out. We appreciate that. We do ask you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Definitely rate us and give us that feedback on whatever you listen to us on, whether it's Google or Spotify or Apple. That really helps the show, and those ratings help other people find us, kind of moves us up the algorithm. So we really appreciate that. And check us out on social media.
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, we're all over everything.
Absolutely. Now that's out of the way.
Yes.
You want to introduce our guest?
Yes, well, we have here Jesse Parker from Doc Swinson's.
Jesse, how you doing, man?
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Rob. Carter, appreciate you having me on the podcast here. I'm excited to see what we get into.
Man, I'm going to first say I'm very impressed with you just because of your age. What you've already done and accomplished at such a young age is beyond impressive.
So you think he's younger than me?
By about 20 years.
Okay.
Yeah, quite a bit, actually.
Wow. I don't know if it looks like that, though, to be honest.
Well, maybe you have a really good camera because it looks that way, too.
Okay.
Oh, man. Well, I'll take it.
Jesse, tell everybody, Doc Swinson's, it's a fairly new brand. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the grand scheme of things, I think it's fairly new. We've really only focused on Doc's, at least putting it out in the market for about just under 2 years.
That's kind of what I thought. Yeah.
But it's been around for about 5 now. We just slowly would release various casks that we would finish from time to time, or a couple single barrels here, a couple little blends here, but nothing major, maybe, 40 casks a year or so. And then about 2 years or so ago, we started kind of going, full ham out on this stuff.
Let's start from the beginning and give people kind of a little history of how this came to be. Being as young as you guys are, I think if I remember right, there's 4 of you guys who kind of, I guess, started this and kind of found some honey barrels, and then it kind of just morphed from there.
In a nutshell, yeah, that's correct. So I've been in commercial distilling since I was 21, primarily when the craft boom started going off, and then mostly focused on gins and brandies in my early 20s, and then wanted to get into whiskeys and wanted to get into blending. That's actually where my passion really lied. So working with all these wonderful producers all over the world, producing different kinds of spirits, and I wanted to learn their techniques and adapt them and apply them to American whiskeys. And somewhere in my mid-20s, I was offered a job to work at this company, which is actually Distiller's Way, is our parent company, and we produce private label products for all sorts of different groups. So I got to use the skills that I've learned over the years, and still are, for other people's projects as well. And then when we had a little bit of extra cash, we would buy these honey barrels from time to time back in the day when you can actually find them.
Yeah. I understand.
That's a good topic to maybe touch on later.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because we
it's on my list of questions.
They're becoming more scarce and more expensive.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll
You're
talk
telling
about
me,
that. Yeah.
I used to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, 10-year-old MGP, no problem. Old Beam or Heavy Hill, sure. And that's not, I don't know. If anybody has that phone number, please, I'll pay for it.
Yeah.
It's just not a thing anymore, unless you have the stock somewhere.
Jesse, I do want to tell you, as we go through our episode, we like to have a little fun with our guests. We have 5 questions that we kind of throw at them blindly.
Okay.
Obviously, you have an expertise in whiskey and blending and that's going to be the main topic. But to kind of pull the veil back a little bit and kind of find out a little bit more about your personality, who you are, we have some questions that we came up with, and we'll ask the first one. Go ahead, Carter. What's the first question? You remember?
I do, but I'm kind of scared that he's not going to be able to give us
He's so young?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So our first question.
It was pre-1991. I'm out of luck.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Well, maybe you've seen a few of these. So the first question is, what is your favorite 80s movie?
Oh, my gosh.
If you've even seen that many 80s movies.
Favorite 80s movies? I mean, yes, I can have to dig here.
Because I'm thinking you're older than my kids who are in their early 20s. And so, we think about whether it be a Top Gun or a Star Wars or Breakfast Club
Indiana
or
Jones.
Indiana Jones.
Wow, okay, now you just open them up right there.
There you go.
The first one that came to mind actually was Highlander.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I
sick.
love that show. I'm a sci-fi kind of guy. So, yeah.
I feel like it was, really impactful. That and basically all the James Bonds. So, I mean,
Yep.
that's expanding more than that. But Highlander really, I think, got me as a kid. I remember seeing that over and over again. I think it scared me a little bit when I was real little.
I think it's
kind of a horror.
I think it scared me when I was real little too.
Yeah.
So I do.
If you said 90s movies, I'd give you a whole slew.
Okay, let's go there. Let's see what would you throw out for 90s movie? What would be a favorite?
Oh man, probably one of my all-time favorite films from the 90s is Captain Ron.
Really?
I love that
anybody's
movie.
seen it.
That's got to be early 90s, isn't it?
Yeah, like 96, 5. Maybe?
Oh, is it middle 90s?
Yeah, I think
Maybe
so.
94. I don't know.
Because that makes me
Martin
think
Short.
older. Captain Ron was.
Oh man, I remember that movie.
classic.
I love that movie.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Martin Short.
yeah.
Gosh, what's the freaking guy's name that was
Kurt
in
Russell, right?
Kurt Russell.
Kurt
yeah.
Russell.
Yeah, Captain Ron. I don't know. That one just always comes to mind.
That's a great one.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about Docs. Let everybody know what makes you all unique. What makes you different? What are you doing that you think differentiates you all from what we might think of other blenders out in the whiskey world?
Sure. I mean, yeah, there's definitely quite a few of us out there, right? I mean, blending houses. What I think really sets Doc apart is our focus is actually manipulating the whiskeys and putting our own stamp on them. So, granted, now we do offer single barrels and things like that, but other than single barrel, every single one of our products is a blend of one or more whiskey, or it's finished in something, or both. So, not a single one of these whiskeys will go through our doors, except for single barrel. As something that we just bought off the shelf. So everything we have here is been changed. And I think some of the neat things is because most of my interest and curiosity in brewing and vintning history is primarily based around processing techniques. So each one of our SKUs has a different processing technique that's been applied to it, borrowed from either a similar industry or a different one altogether. So whether it's our alter ego Solera method, rye whiskey finished in rum casks, or our triple cask bourbon finished in cognac and two different sherry casks, or even just our blenders cut straight bourbon whiskey, I do a different set of techniques on every single one, all for their benefit, of course. And the goal is to offer the best flavor that we can with the products that we work with.
Well, what I'll tell you is I've actually the first time I heard about you guys was there were some 15-year single barrels that were released down here in Texas, and I have to say they're excellent. I was really, really impressed. It was a big spin, so you're kind of like, okay, like let me just make sure. And fortunately, the store I bought it at let me try it, and I liked the two they had. So I absolutely loved it. So I started eyeing your brand a little bit more for kind of like what you guys were doing. So it's really neat to see that you've got these kind of unique offerings too, along with the single barrel stuff.
Well, yeah, we had to back it up. We had to back Doc Swenson's up as something after the 15-year ran out. Really, the 15 years what kind of launched us into the stratosphere, right? I mean, we were releasing, like I said, probably upwards of maybe 40 barrels a year max back in the days, and that was just us playing around with different finishing casks and small blends and stuff of what we could find as we had excess capital to put towards it. And we found these 15-year barrels, and they all are a little different, of course. I mean, a lot of people ended up with this juice. I'm sure you all know that.
Sure.
But the neat thing is, we ended up from each batch that we receive, we blend the different casks and everything together, and ended up with, each one of our batches uniquely different. So if you had more than one, which it sounds like you did, Carter, that you're like, oh, these are quite different. Wow. Huh.
Oh, considerably, actually.
And the funny thing that blew my mind, and this I think goes to, speak about how we blend things, is it tastes different than the other 15-year product on the market that came from the same place, essentially the same set of barrels, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, us kind of in the hobby, us geeks who really like, bourbon and whiskey, that's what we're looking for, something that differentiates it from, everybody else. And that's what's cool about what you guys are doing.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, we're after all of our products right now are MGP based for the most part. Everybody's using MGP base, which is it's great. It's a great base to work with. It's some of my favorites actually of everything I've worked with.
What's MGP?
What?
No, I'm kidding.
MGPI.
Yeah, that one. Actually, didn't they just change their name recently?
I think they got bought out, right?
I heard something about
something
that,
like
yeah.
that. But
I forget. It's some other name. I forget. It doesn't really affect anything. That's my understanding. But
we're going to talk a lot about blending here in a minute. But how do you all determine, obviously, the quality of the barrel, but a single barrel? When you have those rare releases that you're going to do a single barrel, most people might think it's just age, right? If it's 15 or more years, they're going to make it a single barrel. That's probably not always the case.
No. So I since I'm the guy that has to taste them all, I do get tired.
Yeah.
My sales team's like, single barrels are hot right now. Let's do more of them. I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
I only do so many per quarter because I have to go through and taste every single barrel here. And what I'll do is as I get shipments in, I open up every single cask and I have a set of markings. I have a big crayon, basically, a big wood crayon. And I go around and do a sampling of, maybe 20 or 15 barrels in a day because otherwise it just gets silly. And I'll go through and I'll sample and I'll write my notes literally on the sides of the hoops. And I'll eventually collect a huge data set. And there's certain ones that fit profiles that I'm kind of looking for that I think that fits Doc Swinson's the most.
Sure.
And I essentially say, okay, these ones could be allocated towards single barrel. And then my sales guy will take samples of them and do that whole process. Some of them get kicked aside and they're only going to go into blends. And it's not because they're bad. At all. Trust me, that is not why we put them aside. If there's a really bad one, we won't release it and we do something completely different with it. But ultimately, we don't want to cannibalize our core product line either, which is our Blender's Cut and our Alter Egos and Exploratory Casts. We want to make sure those stay really juicy and delicious too.
yeah.
So it's just a really long and arduous process. And every once in a while, I find really interesting barrels that I think are so strange and odd that I will put them in single barrel category. And every once in a while, we'll send them out to somebody that we think would really appreciate those kind of casks.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I do have a quick follow-up. Carter and I have this thing of when we taste through something, we always kind of go through at least twice, because you have that first tasting. What's your Are you a one-time through and make your opinion, or are you a couple times? Or
it depends on the project. So because of the sheer amount of barrels that we process in a year, it's a little too hard on my liver.
Yeah.
to taste them all over and over again. When it comes to single barrels, it's relatively straightforward for me. I've done it enough, and I have these, like I said, these general markers. I'm like, okay, this one would make a great single barrel because it's, it's sweet, it's caramely, it's vanilla-y, and that's what a lot of people are really looking for. You kind of start picking up on what people are looking for.
Yeah,
sure.
It's not for that that oddball client that's like, I want something funky.
Yeah,
and then,
that's where your Jamaican rum comes in, right?
Precisely, exactly. And every once in a while, we'll get like a bourbon barrel that, I kid you not, will taste like a tequila barrel.
Really?
Or something really obscure. And I'm like, okay, this one's really odd. Do we want to use it in one of our blends? Or, hey, Steve's our sales, Steve Maines, our head of sales. I'm like, hey, you have a client that might be interested in this? And sometimes there's people out there that's what they're looking for, something really strange. Not as common, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
so,
cool.
But with all of our other projects, I go through and it takes me sometimes a month or more to decide on what direction I want. The blend, the very same blend, for example, like the triple cast bottle here. Each one of these batches, I start tasting every single cask over and over again. I do it in the mornings and I'll do it in the evenings. Sometimes I do it in the middle of the day, but usually not.
Yeah.
And then I'll take my notes on those and I'll do it over the course of like a week or so before I even start compiling my blend. So I get familiarized with each barrel.
Wow. Yeah, your liver is taking a beating, isn't it?
Yeah, I eat a lot of salad and drink a lot of tea, water, vitamins.
Yeah, I would think like, in your case, it would not be frowned upon to use, a spittoon here.
Yeah, and I'm not like swigging down glasses. It's like 2 or 3 mils max just to coat the tongue is really all I need, and just a little bit to get down your throat.
All right, well, just lost a little respect, Jesse. I
know.
We thought you were a superhero. That's
No, I'd probably only make it to, I don't know, 35.
Yeah, no kidding.
That would be the case.
I do have a question though. So talking about finishing, is there a sweet spot for finishing? I guess there's really not, but I'm just is there something 12 months, 18 months, 6 months? Is there something that just kind of hits?
You're talking about in the finishing barrel.
Yeah, in the finishing barrel.
Yeah, so that's actually a great question. I know a lot of people in the industry that have far more experience than I do swear by like 45 days max, 50 days max, stuff like that. It's really short term. And I can see why they say that, because there tends to be a really nice spot, depending on, all the other factors in your rick house and where you're located, temperatures, that kind of good stuff, the quality of the barrel, etc. That where a few weeks in a barrel, or just shy of 2 months or so, is actually quite nice. And we do release products that have been finished, and whiskeys that have been finished short term, and they're wonderful. And then you start digging into that 3-4 months, and sometimes they just turn, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do we ruin this batch? And this is where you just have to trust in time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm a fan of longer term finishing. I like 6 months, a year, sometimes even 2 years if I can get away with it. But my accountants thinks otherwise.
Yeah,
he's actually really supportive. But in the end, we're a teeny company. But the cool thing is we've actually never released anything that we don't think is good to release.
Oh, absolutely.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Like I said, even Funky Drummer is a great example where we actually held it back, and that whole batch is going to be used for something else. And now I've made a different one, which will be released soon, and I think it's far superior.
So when you do that longer finish, it's not uncommon for you to see where the whiskey takes a little dip, but recovers to a point, and because you see that sometimes in a wine and things like that as well.
Absolutely. There's definitely a life cycle to it. And I can't say that I've been able to pinpoint exact times by any means, even to the month. I have general ideas, but sometimes it depends on what time of the year you're starting it in. Yeah. We don't particularly climate control our warehouse, for example. Big casks are something I love the most. So they're a lot more mellow. So longer time in them is usually better anyways.
Yeah.
So anything in large format, I'm a sucker for. But overall, honestly, every barrel has a different character. So one might be better at a month, another one might be better at 7.
Yeah.
That's what makes, I think, Doc Swinson's also set part of it apart, is we don't just slap a time on it that it gets aged for and then dump it and say it's ready to go.
Yeah.
We've never done that. And I know that's pretty common, and I hear a lot of people, frown on finished whiskeys, but trust me, they can be really good.
We were talking about that before we got on. We were like, I don't know why people, crap on finished whiskeys. I think some of them are the most fantastic things I can have. I don't.
I agree. I mean, why be such a stick in the mud traditionalist? I mean, I can appreciate, a great 15-year product, like that's fantastic, but I can also appreciate, a finished whiskey. So I don't get it.
I'll give you my opinion. I think it's these bourbon nerds who just think that if it's not a bourbon, then it's not worth drinking.
Well, I think also that there
Sorry,
might
Jesse,
be.
That's just sometimes how I sound.
No apologies. I love them all. So
yeah.
There might be a misconception that I don't believe this is true, but you're taking inferior whiskey and you're finishing it and you're making a sellable product.
I mean, I feel like it's the old saying was, why are the French so good at making sauces, right? It was bad meat or something like that, right?
Yeah.
For refrigeration. Yeah. And yes, and that's a great segue into saying that this is the reason why we released Blender's Cut, our straight bourbon whiskey, is to showcase that, yes, we can blend straight whiskeys really well, and that we don't start with bad juice, because Blender's Cut is the base whiskeys that we use to make our finish casks. It's the same juice.
Okay, you bring up a good point. Do you think a lot of consumers and people think that if you're finishing something, it is to cover up a flaw that might be in a whiskey?
I've heard that from so many different, like, whether it's been not usually podcasts, to be honest. Usually y'all know a lot more cool stuff. And
Thank you, man.
When
Isn't he
you're
nice?
like on these things, and there's like a live feed going, and you see like messages and stuff coming across. I've heard it in the public a lot of the times too. That finished whiskey is only bad whiskey, that you're trying to cover up some faults, and that absolutely can be the case, sure. But I wouldn't say most of them do that. Absolutely not.
Because I see
that's where you put flavors and sugar in it. I'm going to be honest. That's what
Yeah.
you do. That's what you want to do.
but and I'm not a Scotch guy, but I
Mm-hmm.
think a tremendous amount of Scotch is finished,
Oh yeah, I mean,
and you don't hear anybody complain about that.
No, I've heard a lot of people say, Scotch, of course, that's the only thing that can be finished in a cask. I'm like, well, first of all, it's not called finishing. That's like a new marketing term.
Yeah.
I mean, don't quote me entirely on that. I mean, I'm not really in depth in the Scotch industry, but a lot of Scotch distillers own like sherry bodegas just so they can have the barrels. I mean, that's been common practice for
yeah.
Decades and millennia. I mean, for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, I think they got something right with the sherry thing, because I
100%.
was actually nosing the sherry and cognac one. This one's been in the market. I've actually never tried this, and I was telling Rob that the nose on it, I haven't tried it yet, but the nose on it gives it and this might sound crazy, the effect of almost a dusty wild turkey product.
I mean, it's just
Neat, huh?
yeah. It's got a fabulous nose. I mean, it's just
Like candy sweet on the nose, like
Oh, absolutely. That's great. I haven't quite heard that exact comparison. That makes me excited to go pull a couple wild turkey bottles out of my library.
Hey, give it a shot, because we're big turkey fans, so
Oh, heck yeah.
And particularly the old stuff,
Oh, yeah.
and yeah, when I have something that kind of sings and hits that note, I go, oh,
Ding, ding,
okay,
ding.
that's
Yeah.
cool. That's cool. You might have found the ultimate cheat code there for the nose. I haven't tried it yet, but it smells really damn good.
Well, I'm excited to hear what you think, and depending on what batch you have, actually, what batches do you have?
Okay, so this is
It'd be like 21-00 something.
003.
Okay, an early one in the market. Wow. Okay, so that came out. And that's the third batch we actually ever made. So there you go. So that's really early in the game, to be honest. That's wild. I think I'm drinking batch 8 right now, and it's been over about a year since we released number 3.
Well,
That's
I can tell you,
delicious.
it's great.
yeah,
It's good. I mean, it's got
great balance. I mean,
I was just gonna say that, nice balance. It definitely has that great mouthfeel. I like lingers. It punches above its proof point for sure.
no doubt about
Yeah.
that. I mean, I still call it the Kentucky hug, but that warm squeeze on the chest is very nice.
Yeah, no, very, very nice. And so I understand that you guys release different releases or different blends or different finishes in different states. At least that's kind of what I was seeing on the map on your website. Now,
Yeah.
I know
So-
that I've seen these two, but I haven't seen too much else.
So we have three core products: Blender's Cut Straight Bourbon Whiskey. We have our Alter Ego Slayer Method Rye Finish and Rum Casks, and our Alter Ego Triple Cask Bourbon finished in Cognac and Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez sherries, which we're trying now. And those ones we produce in fairly sizable batches. I mean, it's not massive, but we distribute it in, I think it's like 34 states or so now, and actually I think 4 countries.
Oh wow.
Cool.
Which is great. I mean, it's like a city in another country.
Sure, yeah.
I realize you
Still.
can find Dr. Winston's in Tokyo in like one liquor store.
But you're there.
Pardon?
But you're there.
But we're there.
Yeah.
I know. It's gone further than me in the last 2 years. And then everything else is generally falls under our exploratory cask line, which can involve things like our 15-year bourbon that we released, a year or so ago. It generally involves like finishing casks that we're playing with, and I might only have like 2 or 3 casks. So we're only going to be able to bottle, 600 or 700 bottles, or small blends, unique blends like Funky Drummer. And what we do is we pick a region where we want to release just that finish. So you'll only find them in some regions. That is true. We try and keep our core line, the 3 core line products, in as many places as possible.
Sure.
But as far as our exploratory cask goes, you kind of have to hunt them down.
Yeah.
And actually, recently, here's my one sales pitch. Recently, we started an online sales thing. So if you really want to find one, go to our website, docswhiskey.com, and you might be able to buy some of the bottles that you can't find near you.
Cool.
From the special, from the exploratory cask line.
Nice.
So here's
just limited.
Here's a question I have. You guys pride yourself on, with your blending technique, it's the old world technique. And a lot of people are going to go, what's the difference? What's the significance by saying I'm old world versus what would be considered new world?
That I've never had that question asked me. And I think that was more of just an attractive marketing term.
Okay. I was going, I wonder what they do different. What's the blending
I guess I'm kind of good. This one's coming off the cuff here. And what comes to my head when I say old world technique is, because of all these techniques that I've learned about over the years, generally came from like old manuscripts and books that are, most of this stuff is still employed today. So it's still very modern in the same right. And I've just adapted it to American whiskey. That's really the recipe here. So old world mostly meaning, European Scotch blending, Irish whiskey blending, cognac blending. We pull a lot from the sherry industry.
Okay.
That would be the real, I guess, old world technique that we're talking about there.
So let me ask you this. When you're blending a whiskey, a lot of people might think the product needs to be the same, that you're getting from whatever distiller, you're getting that distillate, and you're going to blend, whether it's multiple barrels or different products from that distiller. Is that always the case, or can it be different products from different distillers that you go, I think this would work together?
So the latter is more what we kind of follow, because we don't have unlimited stocks of everything. And we have a really great stock of our MGP base, absolutely. But one of my dreams would be, could we put some Kentucky in there?
Yeah. See, and I like that approach. I think that's great.
I mean, there's a couple groups, right? Like Barrels killed, Bardstown killed in that area. They did such a great job with their blend of 3 different states going on.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's Canadian in there, or for some of them, and whatever. And that is the beauty behind blending, is you're taking your elements and you're assembling them in a way that you think it's the best possible way to present them. And I think that's what we're really trying to stick to, because in the end, our products aren't, they're not 100% consistent between them. That's why we put batch numbers on them, for example.
Yeah. Well,
they are unique, and the goal is to get better every time if we can too. So, find what we would like to improve on each batch and say, okay, maybe next time we do a little bit longer aging, maybe we blend this in, a little differently.
Yeah.
So.
No, that makes sense. And I mean, I guess, you talk about like a Bardstown or somebody, or a Barrel or somebody like that, and those are actually 2 good comparisons, I think. They put it like a discovery batch 2, 3, 4, like whatever. And it's pretty, I mean, those are limited. They're gone. You're not going to have them again. So.
Yeah. I mean, scarcity sounds good.
Yeah.
In marketing too.
So do we want to ask another question?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Yeah, like another,
you're talking about one of our 5 questions. Yeah. We've gotten we've got 4 left. We've gotten so engaged in this conversation. I'm dropping the ball, Carter.
I know. It's okay. I'm here to pick it up, man. The assist.
Yeah. Okay, second question in our 5 questions for you, Jesse.
Okay.
As a kid, like 2 years ago, your favorite food growing up, and it can be a specific food, or it could be, going to grandma's house and she made whether it be a meal or a dish or a special, whatever, but just a memory that comes to mind when you think about food and growing up.
Okay, there's 2, and this is not how I am at all anymore, for the record, right? But I absolutely adore, I'm pretty sure I'm made of corn dogs and buttered noodles.
Buttered noodles, just butter on some pasta.
That's it. I'm talking like a little kid, right? I wouldn't touch anything. I was the pickiest eater ever. And radishes, of all things.
You liked radishes?
I loved them. And then beets, corn dogs, buttered noodles, and radishes. That's
he's a picky eater, and that's on the menu.
Yeah, that half
Yeah.
the adults I know don't like radishes or beets.
Yeah, to this point.
We used to grow them in the backyard, and I think it's because you get to pull them out of the dirt and eat them. I think
Are
what
you
did
still
it.
a fan?
Oh, absolutely. There's
Okay.
not much food I don't like. Olives were the last thing that I found that I had to conquer, and that was maybe 5 years ago. Although I'm not really into the canned black olives. I don't think they're very good.
Yeah, with the green.
Same.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I have an affinity for flavor. Let me put it that way. I went from not liking anything as a kid to liking everything somewhere around 11 or 12 years old, and I just have never looked back.
I was very much the same. It took me until, I was in grade school to where I was like, oh, yeah, I like other things other than just, green beans and chicken.
Yep.
Like,
You say grade school. It took me to almost 25 to figure that out.
oh, gosh. Well, I mean, you are from Missouri.
I finally
though.
got there. Yeah. And I love asking you the food question. How much are you into food? Because you were inspired by a couple of guys that are, pretty well-known chefs or food covering guys. One was, really covered it very, very well. And one is a, Michelin star chef.
Oh.
Gordon Ramsay and Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah, they were kind of. So I have three childhood heroes, and those are two of them. I won't say the third. We'll leave that one off. But
Okay.
it's not a bad thing. It's not that important anymore.
If it's a superhero, that's fine.
Surprisingly, well, no,
No.
definitely not.
Okay.
But Gordon Ramsay and Anthony Bourdain, I used to wake up as a kid in the morning before I go to school. I'd wake up extra early to watch the Travel Channel and the Food Network just to watch them before I went to school every single morning. So I fell in love with Anthony Bourdain in his 90s show.
Okay.
The original one where he almost didn't talk at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before he had his personality. And of course, the F word stole my heart when I was a teenager. Gordon Ramsay's F word was a phenomenal show. And I wish they would bring that one back one day. But yeah, I used to, one of my favorite things to watch in the holidays was actually Gordon Ramsay's holiday special where he makes breakfast in the morning. It's absurd, but it's beautiful.
Oh, man. Well, I speaking of that, one of my favorite, things that he cooks, right? Well, and you're talking about around Christmas time, the Wellington. Yes, I use that recipe myself.
Yeah.
But also he has this steak sandwich video. You gotta look at it.
I don't know if I've seen that one. Huh?
Oh my God! Just look at the steak sandwich. I think it's kind of he does it like a brunchy type of thing or something like that.
Does he shave the
Right
steak?
on.
Kind of thinly shave
He
it?
uses a fillet. He makes a tomato jam to put over the top of it.
Okay, on a brioche bun or something.
Oh, just watch. Just watch.
I'm definitely going to check that out. That sounds amazing.
So, is it just you, Jesse, who's tasting through and making these decisions? Do you have a team that works with you? You are big on, from what I understand, having that hands-on approach. You want your fingers on it, making sure that what's going out, you kind of give your blessing to.
Absolutely. I believe me, I wouldn't sign the bottle otherwise. I know it's digital now because we print so many labels, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
it used to all be done by hand. No, I take a lot of pride in what I do. I'm very proud of it, and I always want to improve on it. But I really won't put anything out that I don't think is good. And yes, I personally pick every single barrel that goes into blends. But with that being said, too, I also, I'm new at this, meaning I've been doing it for about 10 years now, but I'm 31 next week.
Yeah.
So what kind of master can I really be? Yeah, I probably put my classic 10,000 hours in already, probably far surpassed that. But I love collaborating with people and working with them. So I have a team, my whole team, all four of us try all new products to approve them essentially, right? I'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And everybody gives me their opinions. I go back to the drawing board. I'll manipulate it a little bit, sit on it, and we'll go back again and again and again. But once we pick that down, once we get one SKU down, let's just say the Solera method or the Alter Ego, what I'll do is I'll kind of create benchtop blends. And I have my right-hand guy, his name's Garrett. He's wonderful. He stays sometimes the late nights with me, and we just kind of pick through a bunch of different bourbons and say, hey, what do we think about this? and we just kind of go back and forth and say, I don't know, maybe this one should sit in the barrel a little longer. I think this one would be better in this blend, things like that. And we'll essentially kind of, compile some basis to the blends together, actually.
So
I do.
Go ahead.
I do have somebody to bounce a lot of ideas off.
Yeah,
that's good.
He's amazing for it. And he's wicked smart in that area too.
So when you talk to a distillery and you're looking for products, I'm assuming, you tell me if I'm wrong, you're going in with a complete open mind, and you're just tasting through things, and then from how that profile hits you, then you might start to think about, where would I use this product?
That's absolutely correct. You hit that nail on the head. That is exactly what I do. And oftentimes, most of the creativity actually happens in my mind. So once you have the taste profile down, I'll taste it for a couple of days. It ruminates, and I kind of stay away from it for a little while. And then it'll start clicking after like a couple, sometimes it's a couple weeks, sometimes it's a month. It'll start clicking and think, okay, this profile from this distillery or these sets of barrels, I think will go really well with this. And you start. I feel like a lot of chefs might think this way. I don't know. Maybe
I think you're exactly right. Yeah,
for sure.
But that's what they do. It starts clicking, and like, that's a good flavor profile to match with this.
Yeah.
And you just kind of wake up, from your daydream or whatever. You're like, yeah, okay, jot that down. Then you do trials, and that's where exploratory casts really.
Because I'm thinking you probably taste something and you go, I don't have anything for this, nothing, and then you taste something else and you go, now I can go back to that, and now I've got a home for it.
There's a lot of that, and then once in a while I do come across product where I just say no thanks.
Yeah.
I
just doesn't hit you at all.
I don't think it'll fit my brand particularly well.
Gotcha.
That does happen from time to time too.
So I have a question, and I probably should have asked this in the beginning, but whiskey, bourbon, things like that. Have you always been into that? I know you're into it now, but you mentioned like kind of going from the gin and the brandy to where we are today. What got you into the whiskey thing?
I think whiskey, I feel like it's the pinnacle of American spirit, right? I mean, I know not everybody would necessarily agree with that, but there's so much love for it. Right. That also being, there's a whole other side that will get you down on it too. But
yeah, sure.
there's a lot of love for whiskey, and I think it's just where the focus in the industry is, and where like people such as yourselves are, like the real people who are interested in like tasting these things and appreciating them. Just like good wine, for example, or people who are really into beer. And I've always liked spirits far more than I liked non-distilled products, to be honest.
Yeah, it's okay.
Although I have a real soft spot for wine, so
yeah.
No, so I'm on the right podcast.
Yes, you are.
I don't know as much about wine, so it's like pure enjoyment for me, to be totally honest.
Yeah, we're big fans.
Whereas whiskey, I'm like the wheels are turning, right? And I think I was in my early 20s, and I really want to start turning my focus towards blending whiskeys, and that was because honestly, there was a product when I tried it for the first time. It was Redbreast.
Oh yeah, love that.
And the first time I tried Redbreast, I wasn't particularly in love with whiskeys in my early 20s. I think I had a little too much, Jack back in the day in college, and it kind of put me in the wrong direction. I was way more into gins and tequilas, and rum. Rum's always stolen the heart for me, But whiskey, I find so fascinating and interesting, and it's American to the core. At least this American whiskeys are. But it was the Redbreast that I really tried. That Irish whiskey. It was their blending that just made me melt. I couldn't put those glasses down. I was like, this is so phenomenal. Every time I'd pick it up, I'd put a little on my tongue, and I could sit and chew on a glass for an hour and a half easy.
Yeah,
it was just a small glass, and I just didn't want to fully put it down. I just wanted to, bathe in it, basically. It was so good. And mind you, I was 21, 22, somewhere in there. And I think that kind of sparked most of my interest in how do they do this? How do they make this thing so darn good? And, I have my, it's all different now, but I think that's what really opened the gates.
Well, you answered my question. That was going to be my follow-up. Was there a whiskey that kind of gave you that aha moment? And it sounds like Redbreast was it. And I'll tell you, it's one of my favorites.
Oh, I love Redbreast. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing.
They just do a beautiful job at everything.
Yeah. Well,
whether you like Irish whiskey or not,
Yeah.
It's really to me, like the Irish whiskey thing is it's beautiful, it's subtle, it's nuanced. It's definitely a totally different thing, but there's a magic in it for sure.
There absolutely is. In fact, I have to honestly, I kind of took I don't know if they would agree with this, but that's kind of where the playbook for a lot of docks came from. Our focus wasn't on over finishing whiskeys. We think there's, there's kind of a divide, I think, in finishing whiskeys. People, they're good. There's a lot of whiskeys that have a lot of flavor from the finishing cask that are wonderful, but I feel like we tempered ours a lot more. We wanted to be more subtle and use the finishing cask primarily to, add just a little bit of layer characteristic in it, or a little bit of balance. That's our real goal to making docks. It's not to say, hey, this is cognac in your face, this is Pedro Jimenez in your face. It's just, that's not the way direction we wanted to go, which sometimes we get a little, some people don't like necessarily what we do because they're like, well, I can't taste the Pedro Jimenez. And I'm like, you're not really supposed to.
Yeah, that would be a bit overkill. Then you could just buy the bottle.
Exactly. That's how I feel about it. I'm like, just go buy Pedro Jimenez. It's a lot cheaper. And so our goal is to use nuance to make a really nice whiskey.
So here's a question for you. How hard is it for you to just sit down, relax, and just sip on a whiskey without, just enjoying the moment versus trying to dissect what's in your glass?
Luckily, I enjoy dissecting it, so it's not so bad. All right. I'm a fairly extroverted person, and I like conversation. So when I'm with people, I can actually enjoy the whiskey. I might pick it apart a little bit and comment on it in my head, but ultimately it doesn't seem to get in the way too much. When I'm on my own, on the other hand, no, I'm like there with a surgical knife. I want to know everything about it, how they made it, what gives it this flavor, is it the yeast, is it the aging, where are they located, what kind of distillation equipment they have, you name it.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not so bad. But when I really want to relax, I drink wine.
Okay. There you go. There you go. I like how you think, Jesse.
So should we fire another question?
Question number 3. That's what I was going to do.
Okay.
Absolutely. Question number 3. Best decade for music. 80s, 90s, or 2000s? I think I know the answer.
I'm going to have to say, well, that's a great question. I'm a sucker for all, good alternative rock, to be totally honest. So probably, mid 90s through early 2000s.
Okay, a little overlap there.
A little bit.
Okay,
nice.
Huge, for example, Blind Melon, one of my all-time favorite bands ever. So early, mid 90s. I don't know. It's just like synonymous with the Seattle area. And
that's what I was gonna say. You're from the area,
I have some a cousin who was heavy in the grunge thing. Alice in Chains, Lane Staley. So
yeah, absolutely.
Very underrated unplugged concert. Is the Alice in Chains unplugged?
It is really good. But then again, I'm a huge. I don't even know what decade this would really be, but I love reggae and ska. It's. I feel like that just spans a lot of things going on there, but particularly in the early 2000s. I think the first album I remember really listening to as a kid, my parents were very open about these things, was Sublime.
Yeah, there you go.
So, yeah, that's a huge influencing factor. A lot of Peter Tosh, stuff like that. So ultimately, it is either that or grunge.
Nice.
Well, another question I have is, what's kind of the future? What's the vision for Docks? Where do they want to go? And I ask that because you guys are doing mostly bourbon now, as far as your blending and finishing in some other casks. But I think about Texas. And down here in Texas, it's so freaking hot, like you talked about, Carter. I think the distillers that are down here do a really good single malt. And is an American single malt something you'd like to play with a little bit, or are you looking at things like that?
Yeah, I mean, so yes, it openly, yes. I would love to try playing with just about anything, and that's because the other side, like I said, of Doc Swinson's is Distiller's Way, the parent company. I got to meddle with rums and tequilas and gins quite often too. So my head's always turning on that end. And it's kind of funny that you asked that question specifically about single malts, because I was on a podcast a few months ago that asked me about that as well. In fact,
okay,
I wouldn't say it's the highest on my list in the next probably year or so, but I would like to work with a few other American single malt distilleries in possibly doing a collaboration project.
Okay.
Oddly enough, I was actually in Austin in October for Discus, Distilled Beers Council of the United States. conference, and I happened to meet quite a few. I can't remember.
Do you remember?
Names
Did you meet Chris Hart by chance?
I feel like that's really familiar.
Okay. I knew he was there.
Chris Hart is not. What group is he from?
He's associated with Prideful Goat with Gulf Coast.
Gulf
down
Coast
here.
Distillers. Yeah.
Oh, I know. I think I've talked to him on the phone years ago about a project.
Probably.
Yeah.
But no. What is it? I can't think of the darndest late. I think it was one of them was Iron Root.
Oh, Iron Root. Yeah, Mike and those guys, they do a great job.
Andalusia is a really small.
Andalusia is mostly making single malts.
Yep. And then there's somebody else, and I really enjoyed their whiskeys.
I'm a real big fan of Still Austin.
What's that?
Still Austin?
I didn't make it. I was only there for like 2 days, and I didn't make it there, and I wanted to meet somebody from there, and I haven't yet.
Yeah, they do a really good job.
Wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Balcones does a lot of single malts as well.
Yes, and I remember meeting, was that Chip Tate or not? From a long time ago.
Yeah.
OG. Back when I was 21, the distilled spirit stuff was like 100 people.
Right.
Like all the conferences were teeny. I'm sure that, just a couple years before that, there was probably like 4 people there. It's all done in a room.
Right.
Now you get thousands of people that go to them. I don't even know. I don't get out often. Balcones does some really wonderful stuff.
Yeah, they do.
I'd like to focus a little bit more, or keep my focus really on Doc Swinson's and bourbon and rye.
Okay.
That's truly, I think, where the heart and the blood
so
of the brand is.
Are there some carrots you can dangle? Are there some things that you can kind of tell us what's on the horizon that, folks listening can be excited to kind of anticipate these things coming out?
Yeah, absolutely. So other than our exploratory casks, we are working on another project I've actually been working on for like 4 years almost. And it's actually a tequila.
Oh,
really? Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And that's because I've done some tequila projects for some, store groups, and I've come across a producer in particular that is literally like family. They're amazing people. I've spent quite a bit of time in the Rondas region, so Highland style tequila, and with their family. The whole family runs the operation. And every time they come to the United States or I'm in Mexico or whatnot, we try and meet up at least for dinner, which is wonderful. And I've been to backyard barbecue with them, stuff like with their family. Like it's wonderful. Anyways, and they make some really amazing tequilas, and a lot of them don't necessarily even come to the United States. Some of them do, but most of them don't. And I fell in love with one there, and it has it's got a nice mix of both the mechanically crushed and Tahona, so crushed with the wheel, the big stone wheel, and it gives this really beautiful grassy, peppery note that you don't find in a whole lot of tequilas available in the United States, at least up here.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's more of them. There's like thousands of tequilas every time I go to a store. I'm like, whoa, this is a whole wall of tequila.
Yeah.
And we decided that we wanted to work on releasing a tequila that is done kind of similarly to how we produce Doc Swinson's. So we want to take our techniques from here and apply it to tequila and see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that'll be a lot of fun.
Casks. So kind of like basically taking a form of like a triple cask, the one we're drinking right now, the Doc Swinson's triple cask, and applying it to tequila and seeing what we could come out with.
That'd be cool. I mean,
we're excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And heck, in Texas, obviously, huge tequila fans down here. We know a few of them. So
I have a feeling Texas might be the first state we release it in.
Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea, Jesse.
I guess that brings me to the point. How's the brand doing in Texas? I mean, I see it in a lot of stores.
It's doing well. Texas was, I think, the third state we put Doc Swinson's in, and actually one of the largest ones as far as volume of sales. I mean, it's a big state, right?
Yeah, sure.
And you're all very whiskey focused, which is wonderful. We love it.
Yeah.
So Doc seems to be doing really well in Texas. I unfortunately I wish I could speak more on that. I try and stay in the barrel warehouse more than the sales side.
Oh yeah.
So what are, let's go through your lineup of what you're offering right now. Obviously we touched on not available everywhere, but you gave a solution, as far as getting online, but just talking through, some of your products that people might be interested in, because I think you've come up with some really cool things.
Thank you. So sorry, the question was one more time.
What your product line, kind of what you have out now that you're excited for? I mean, obviously can't get it everywhere, but they can order it online potentially. But just to kind of let everybody know what's out in the market right now from you all that you guys are proud to have out there.
Absolutely. I think, so our core line I'm super proud of because they've taken arguably the most amount of my energy up, to be honest. And that's the two that are sitting right in front of you. I've poured my heart into those projects, and we've seen a lot of great reward and response from the community, and the market in general. Whether it's the awards people or the just in general people buying it in the stores. Our distributors seem to really love Blender's Cut, which was released in November. Which I'll have to get you guys a bottle of that at some point in time. That's our straight bourbon. So you can kind of see the progression of how we did this. This is like the prequel. We went backwards.
Yeah.
So I'm personally really proud of our core line, and they've done, like I said, exceptionally well in the market.
And they're in 34 states, you said.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I believe all three of them are in the majority of those states. Blender's Cut, because we released it in November, might not have made it to every single state yet. I don't know that answer.
Okay.
If you want to know if it's near you, once again, go to docswhiskey.com or docswinsons.com and check out the bottle locator or bottle finder.
Yeah, I thought that was great on your website.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you can type in your zip code and it'll pop up like what store Docs is in, and you might need to give them a call to see what ones they actually have, though.
But I also liked that it tells you who will deliver it for you.
Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that.
That was great. I was like, Grizzly will drop that off.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I forget nice. See, for being 30, I'm not I feel like versed in like modern technology of how this stuff works. I think that's why I love barrels so much. It's just, they haven't changed in a long time.
Yeah.
Same shape, they do the same thing.
We've talked a little bit or a lot about bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously this rye is fantastic. How much you enjoy working with rye as well? I mean, the it's a different type of profile. And so how do you do a barley rye, or what's kind of your mash bill for when you put rye recipes together?
95.5.
95.5, you know it. So like I said earlier, everything released is changed somehow here. Either it's hand selected if it's like the single barrel, or every product we do is a blend, or at the very least it's finished, right?
Sure.
And the two in front of you are both blends of two different mash bills at a minimum. We now are doing everything we have is 5 years at a minimum. Some of the earliest batches, the rye, some of it had some like 3 and 4 year in it as well. But we put that into a giant Solera system. So that's a whole behemoth in our warehouse, actually. It's 8 barrels tall now, and it's got, I think, 164 barrels in it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so everything in there is bordering at minimum of 6 years old. So the neat thing about the rye is it continually changes, right? It's constantly aging, because we're never finishing, emptying the casks. We just top them off.
Yeah.
Minimum 5 year or 6 year, whatever we have in stock, really. And right now it's all around 6 years for our rye stocks. And I personally, to answer your question, I love working with rye. Rye whiskeys are amongst my favorite in general. I just like spice. I love the flavor. I like the little extra, heat that sometimes you get from it. And particular MGP rye is quite, well, I mean, we've all tried it, right?
Oh, yeah.
MGP rye is quite wonderful. I know some people don't like the classic, was it the horse blanket, the straw kind of characteristic that goes in there. But if you play with it a little bit, it actually goes away.
Yeah. I actually like it. I mean, to me, I think MGP makes better rye than bourbon. I'm sorry, just my opinion.
I don't know if they would necessarily disagree either. I mean, they're kind of well known for it. I mean, that's what they do. I think they produce something like 30 something percent. Don't quote me on that. This was years ago. It was the last time I heard this, but it was like 30 something percent of all the rye in America.
Man, that's crazy.
Which is wild. Once again, don't quote me. You might want to call them on that one. But once again, this is a blend of a high rye, a classic MGP, which most people are familiar with, the 95.5, which is 95% rye, 5% malted barley. And then we blend in a pretty hefty portion of their 51% rye base as well. So it has quite a bit of corn in it, which is really nice. So it actually kind of brings you a little bit more back to those classic bourbon notes. Which is why I think a lot of people like the Doc Swinson's Alter Ego Rye who don't even like rye whiskey. We find a ton of people. For example, we do a lot of tastings with bourbon societies, and we've had a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, this member or whatnot." That's there'll be like 30 or 40 of us on the screen. This member absolutely hates rye, but they like yours.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
That's cool.
We get that a lot, and these are also people who love rye that like it too. So it hits all those nice little marks, that do really well. It's both spicy, it's sweet, and it, to me, depending on which section of the Solera we're pulling from, it either smells like poached spiced pears, like straight up, like right from a pie or something like that, right? Or like right from a really good can of I don't know if your grandparents or parents
sure.
or canned pears at home.
That's what I was going to say. The canned pears, yeah.
My mother did that a lot as a kid, and sometimes they'd ferment, and we'd all feel a little funny,
or feel good.
Yeah,
really good. My mom used to keep those ones for me. She's like, "Oh, this one's fermented. You want it?"
Mommy, let me drink the juice. Yeah,
you can see it just runs in the family. Anyways, this rye I think really hits a lot of those notes, and being finished in rum that we actually curate and blend here. So I also blend the rum base that goes into our ex-bourbon barrels for a period of time, and we use those bourbon barrels to influence the new rye blend that goes into it that had the rum in it.
Okay.
We put that at the top of the Solera. Well, figuratively, it's actually just sitting on the ground, but so it goes through a set of 1, 2, 3, and then out into a bottle situation. Yeah. So it's a lot of liquid processing. I don't know. I kind of went on tangent there.
No,
that's super cool. Yeah.
You ready for question number 4?
Let's do it.
Okay. What is of all time, your favorite sitcom? One that you can watch over and over again.
Wow. That might take me a minute here.
You have a few that jump out? Are you a sitcom fan? I figure most people are.
Yes. Gosh, I don't watch. I'm one of those people that I don't really rewatch things.
Okay.
Because I did it once, so I'm I'm over it. Like I'll never reread a book unless it's like a textbook or something on whiskey.
Yeah.
I just don't do that. But what have I watched again that I really liked? What are your favorites? That might jog my memory.
I mean, my all-time favorite is probably...
That's what she said.
Yeah, The Office.
The Office.
Yeah, and I mean, mine is Seinfeld.
Seinfeld's a great one.
That is the one that I actually have rewatched, and fairly recently, to be honest, is Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's a classic.
Well, it came back out on Netflix. So that's kind of it. I see it, and my wife's not from the United States, so she's never watched Seinfeld. So sometimes we're just catching Seinfeld episodes once in a while, just to kill some time.
Absolutely, they're perfect for it too.
A lot of people in your age bracket will say Friends.
Of course. I mean, Friends is. That's synonymous with my childhood.
Yeah.
Right? I that was probably the first one that came to my mind, but I've never rewatched it. And I don't think I ever will, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was a time and a place, and my brother and I used to watch that. When we were kids, I don't think we understood half the themes that were going on. We were barely. We weren't even teenagers. But I will say, other than this isn't really sitcoms, but you get me on Futurama.
Okay. That kind of qualifies.
This was amazing, but Futurama, that one is so clever, so witty, and so well written. I think it was a little bit before its time sometimes.
Yeah, and
it didn't quite get the appreciation it really deserved. But Futurama, if I could skew your question a little bit, that would be the
I would consider that valid. I mean, because to me, growing up, The Simpsons was something that we watched all the time.
Or What was the guys on MTV?
Oh, Beavis and Butthead.
Beavis and Butthead.
I mean, I don't know about I'd put that one at the top.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I did watch that too. Took me years to get into South Park, I'll be honest, but it wasn't my thing right off the bat.
Well, here's kind of a two-part question for you. For you and for Docs, how important is the history of whiskey? And then kind of where do you see whiskey going in the future? I mean, a lot of people start to talk about, is the bubble going to pop? There's just this whiskey craze right now in the States. And is it going to pop, or is it still just going? I mean, juices, we haven't even touched on it yet, and this might lead into that, about the barrels that you guys try to source, and how tough is that becoming for you? So I guess I'm throwing 3 questions at you, Jesse.
Yeah, okay. So the first one to clarify is, does whiskey history matter? I think it's always good to know about your past so you can understand what's happening now and then in the future. So yes, I think it is important to understand. And luckily, I've got a great team, my business partners that are far more in-depth, versed in actually the history of the economics behind whiskey than I am. I'm more, once again, I'm just obsessed about processing and flavors. That's really where my interest in the history comes from. But I do think it's really important to have a good grasp on that, because I mean, what's happening right now is pretty, it's unprecedented. It's absolutely wild. I think I was having this conversation earlier with somebody about, I used to be able to pick up the phone, like, I kid you not, pick up the phone, call somebody, somebody I knew at one of the distilleries that would broker bulk, barrels, and say, hey, what do you got? And they'd, give me a list of a bunch of stuff. And, honestly, there's a lot of stuff between 5 and 15 years on it. And I used to be able to just buy it off the shelf, like going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
That was not very hard. And it wasn't even that. I mean, it was expensive because people weren't necessarily buying $200 and $300 bottles of whiskey all day long, let alone $100 bottles, still pretty steep. Whereas that's become more commonplace over the last couple of years. And let me tell you, it's not because we're trying to gouge our fans here. It's not at all. It's because the barrel is so expensive.
Yeah.
We used to be able to buy those like 10-year ones for like a couple grand, $3,000. One, you can't even get them anymore. At least I haven't been able to find them. They're basically gone. So if you have any in stock, and you want to sell any, let me know. I've got a couple secrets in the back here, and that they're pretty old, but I have no idea when no plans on releasing them anytime soon. But it's teeny quantities, so I have to drop that one nugget in there. Otherwise, no. Over the last 2 years, essentially, as far as I could tell, almost everything has been bought up. If you're trying to get into this now, unless you have some really great connections and a ton of cash, I imagine this would be a lot harder. I feel pretty lucky for started this 6 years ago, because I think that really helps solidify our interest to a couple really great producers. I mean, it's been hard to knock on some of the doors of stuff that we'd like to work with, and we buy a decent quantity. It's just tough. I mean, until they open up, I think a lot of hedge funds actually bought the barrels. Yeah. It'd be more likely most of them probably went to hedge funds and stuff. So I think more of it will be flooding into the market in the next couple of years. Once they they find their percent return they're looking for, and they hit that nice, probably like, 4 to 7 year age, I think they're going to start opening the doors a little bit more.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I kind of, bird shot that answer out there.
No, that covers it.
No, I mean, we hear it all the time, even from like, people, that we know, like Chris with Gulf Coast Distillers and that kind of stuff, that the barrels are just really difficult to find these days.
And when you find them, they're just ridiculously expensive, to your point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking for, like I said, I don't even know what a 10-year-old barrel would cost right now. I couldn't even tell you because I haven't even heard of one. I barely even heard about 5-year-old barrels. That's even hard to come by. I mean, that's like that's a drop in the ocean to be able to find that. Most of the things I've been offered lately I've gotten a couple like 4-year offers, a few 5-year, but they're pretty small lots, not a whole lot. And then other than that, it's like I'm even having a hard time getting new make.
Oh, wow.
And how does that impact you? I mean, how hard is that for you? I mean,
No, that's a great question. So what we've kind of set up Doc Swinson's to do is we meter out roughly how many barrels we want to produce in a year, and we do have quite a few barrels in our back stock, a couple thousands, and that we have in our back stock of various ages. So what we'll do is, since we have this number, we just kind of say, okay, we're only going to release this many, every single year, and we'll reevaluate every single year if we want to up that or drop it down or whatnot.
Sure.
Depending on what available comes on the market. So as other barrels come up, for sale that are like 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, we can help augment our stocks. But yeah, it does come at a higher price, that's for sure. So we were pretty lucky to put in a pretty large, purchase over the last 2 years or so to help keep Doc Swinson's going for the next, basically 3 to 5 years without really a hiccup, unless we decide to grow like massively. Yeah. That's a different story.
So I got one kind of, okay, I kind of know the answer, but are you interested in distilling your own product anytime soon?
It's so funny. I feel like I get this question a lot more recently than I have in the past. Yeah, I mean, that's my roots are in distillation, right? It was brandy and gin. I have distilled whiskeys before, absolutely. I wouldn't say it's a specialty of mine. I would love to get back into distillation at some point in time, and there are some very loose plans of doing that here. I think it's going to be one of those things where it might take us, another year or two before we even light up a still. There's a lot to do in the meantime. But yeah, I'd love to, and I think I might actually throw my hat back in the ring with gin for a little bit I know it's maybe not the answer everybody wants to hear, but that's where I got my minor 21-year-old fame from. my like half a second fame was some gins I released back in 2012, 13. So we won some really great international competitions, like top dogs. So
nice.
I'd like to try that again, and then eventually, yes, I'd love to get into whiskey. I don't know what that looks like, but yeah.
Well, we got question number 5 for you as we kind of wrap it up and let you get back to your evening. Sure. Carter, you want to fill this one, Eddie?
Yeah. So we call this the final nightcap question.
Okay.
So like this is the last thing that you're going to drink.
You're going to go sing with the angels.
Yes, this is the before the big nap. So what is the last thing you'll have in your glass? Now, some people will say, an old favorite, something that's consistent that they just always have liked. And some people like myself will be like, I want to try that unicorn thing because that's just what I want to try.
It's eluded me forever.
Yeah, so I finally want to try it. Yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so the last thing I'd have in my glass, Carter, I'm right there with you. Actually, I like to exercise my palate and try new things all the time. I think that's what helps me stay on my toes here, right? And also keep me interested. So I'll hunt down bottles, other people's products, and whether it's a straight bourbon, a finished whiskey, anything like that, and I'll chew on that for like a good 35, 40 minutes, an hour sometimes, just because I want to experience it. I want to see what it'll do for me. Whether it's just pure enjoyment or I want to like figure out why they did something a certain way. And then alternatively, there's a second side of this. It's usually when I actually try my exploratory casts and keep tabs on them.
Okay.
So more often than not, at the end of the evening, and I like working pretty late, so I'll just be here because it's quiet. Nobody else is here. I can just wander around the warehouse. I have a Razor scooter I kick around on.
There you go.
Nice. Old school. Little Razor scooter I kick around on, and all of our lights are like have these automatic things. So when you go under them, they pop on. So they just go, and I just kick around, and I chew on whiskeys, or I'll sit on the barrels for sometimes hours.
I got to ask you, if you have the scooter, do you have a whiskey thief with a hoster?
No, that would be amazing though. I don't. I've learned because I'm terrible at putting things back. So I've learned over the last couple of years, what I have to do is just have several whiskey thieves.
There you go.
So I place whiskey thieves all over the building, and unfortunately, I hide them in barrels, so half the time I can never find them. But I do have one pocket-sized whiskey thief. I don't think it's not in here, but it's only it's only about yay big or so.
Yeah.
And you can kind of just like pop it in your back pocket and go. So yeah, I'll have to get a holster if you know anybody that's good with leather work.
I actually do.
Yeah, there you go.
That could be fun. Okay, all right, we're gonna have to get connected here after this.
Well, Jesse, man, we've had a great time having you on. We appreciate you, sharing all about Doc Swinson's for us. We think it's a great product, and we obviously hope you have great success in the future. Continue to put out these great products for us to enjoy. Carter?
I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, and I really like the product. So, cheers to you, man.
Hey, Rob, Carter, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. This was awesome. I hope to do it again with some new fun experimental.
We would love to come back and have another conversation and see what you guys are doing here in the future.
That sounds great. If I'm ever in Texas, I'll have to stop by Sahab and we'll grab some good food. Yeah, I'll have really
we'll have some food and some wine along with the whiskey.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
This is great. So cheers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thanks, everybody, for listening to this episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. And until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.